Indian Military Review, and the Center for Joint Warfare Studies organized a 2-day webinar and virtual expo on night vision and electro-optics India on 16 to the 19th of January 2021 for the Indian Armed Forces, paramilitary forces, and industry. The event covered thermal imaging, image intensifiers, infrared detectors, surveillance and reconnaissance, laser rangefinders, weapon sights, integrated helmets, periscopes and masts, NVDs for platforms, binoculars, goggles and monocles, and fire control systems. The Director General of Infantry, Director General of Capability Development, the Director General of Armored Corps and the Additional Director General of the Army Design Bureau were among the distinguished speakers. There were 7 sessions over 2 days, and the video recording of the proceedings were rebroadcast over the next 2 days.
Jai Hind and very good afternoon to all of you. We move on to the session on sub-conventional operations, and I welcome the Chair, General G.D. Bakshi, Seva Medal, Vishish Seva Medal. Though he needs no introduction, a very prolific writer and a very, very well acknowledged personality on all issues strategic, but just by way of introduction for some of those who might be on the webinar, is that he has commanded an infantry battalion, a brigade and Romeo force, all in J&K, and he has served twice in the Directorate General of Military Operations, and that too during Op Pavan and Op Vijay. And of course, he is the editor of Indian Military Review and a distinguished fellow of St. George. So I welcome you, sir, and the field is all yours to conduct this session on sub-conventional operations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I thought this is a most needed session in terms of you see combat in the counter-insurgency and counter-terrorist environment. May I remind everybody here that in India we had a mini revolution of sorts, especially in the field of counter-terrorist operation in J&K, when we first introduced our night vision devices. You will all recall the time when in 2003 we had started building the fence on the line of control. There were 2 views on the fence, that it would be a waste of expenditure of money that could be used for offensive purposes elsewhere. But we had found the fence to be highly effective in the Punjab. The moment we had the fence in place in Punjab, terrorism had declined perceptibly and very, very, very dramatic manner. So when the fence construction started, General Bridge was the chief, and he really pushed it on all cylinders firing. In 2005, the fence was complete. Once again, we had a dramatic drop in the levels of infiltration, which fell by 70 to 80% almost once the fence was put in place. But the major fact is that the bulk of the interception was not taking place on the fence, but it was taking place ahead of the fence, where we had started sending out a whole series of small ambushes, 5 to 6 men, 7, 8 men, etc., strung out all ahead of the line of the fence and this side of the line of control. And they had started using the handheld thermal imagers, HHTIs of the Israeli origin, and these had very small batteries, limited life, etc., which was a problem. But the HHTIs turned night into day. And the bulk of the attrition that we imposed upon the infiltrating Pakistani terrorists was ahead of the LC, and because of these handheld thermal images which transformed night into day and gave a significant quantum jump to our night combat capability. We were able to reduce terrorism by 80%, 80% because of this combination of the fence, the small ambushes ahead, and the HHTIs. And I would give more credit to the HHTIs than the fence per se. Any obstacle can be crossed, but when you turn night into day, when you take away his cover of darkness and you are able to kill him, you are able to degrade his infiltration effort by 80%. That was the end of Pakistani sponsored terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. And thereafter they tried to turn defeat into victory by making it a kind of an intifada with stone pelters. They had clearly lost the war of the Kalashnikov. Clearly lost the war of the Kalashnikov with the with the introduction of HHTI. And then we wanted to introduce HHTIs in a very big way. But we were quite surprised, that in the army we had started thinking small. And they said we have very little, these are very expensive and we have very little funds. So we will have one, night vision device per section. In 10 men, one man would have night vision device. Now that was ridiculous. Correctly speaking, night vision will become a possibility, will become effective when every man is so equipped. And it took us a long time to say that every man must have these helmet-mounted monocle, so that only one eye is sort of enabled to view at night, and by putting it on both eyes, we don't lose the natural night vision capabilities that we have. Now we are getting back to common sense. We have gotten back to common sense, and we are now in the new helmet. We are trying to introduce inbuilt communications, hands-free communication, and the monocle that we had been talking of for every man. Night vision is the real, what shall I say, revolution in military affairs. And if we don't keep pace, we will lose the battle. Whether it is conventional combat, I always cite the case of Iraq, where the American, used their Abrams tanks with devastating effect against the T-72s, and we were alarmed. So, but when we checked, we found that by day, the T-72 was as good as the Abrams in terms of kinetic combat. But it was at night that the Abrams tanks with their eyes, which had almost 1,500 meters range, which was totally able to outclass the T-72s, which then had infrared imagery, 100, 200, 300, dust degraded. And that is how the Americans won in Iraq, because of night vision, night fighting capabilities. Night fighting capabilities are the RMA of our age. And if you don't keep pace, you will lose, whether it is in conventional warfare or it is in sub-conventional warfare. So with this, as a very brief introduction, may I now call upon Mr. Sandeep Shah, the Managing Director of Atmel Electronic Products, to kindly share his views with us. Thank you. Over to Mr. Shah.
Thank you, Major General Bakshi. It's a pleasure being as part of this esteemed gathering. And good afternoon to you, sir. Good afternoon to all the delegates on the dais. I would request permission for sharing the screen. Thank you. So please do let me know once you are able to see the screen.
Yeah, it's fine. Everything is good.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, Optimize Electrotech is an intelligence surveillance platform startup. We are extremely highly encouraged by the clarion call of our Honorable Prime Minister to make in India. And with that as a vision, we have converted quite a lot of our indigenous technologies that we developed over a period of time into platforms that can be used for making different types of products. And these have been demonstrated. Of course, I need not show it to the Defense Forces of India. This is a picture of India, the Northern Command, and we have been able to demonstrate our capabilities in the last few months as the products have come to the fore. Optimized Electrotech has been formed with a mission to provide accurate, actionable, real-time insights. The difference between us and what you may have as the overall passive imaging systems out there is that we are able to do all the edge analytics on board, and we are also making all of this within India. All the edge analytics is built inside different types of platforms. All the platforms can be used in different locations, including on land, in the air, on sea, at different locations. So when it comes to situational awareness, one does not need to really rely on the person on the field alone. Of course, the person on the field is highly precious, and we would want him to look at the field rather than be worried about each and every image out there. From that perspective, we have built our systems. Therefore, these are all autonomous. Of course, you are again not going to be relying on somebody else to tell you whether or not you get some of the part or not, whether or not you can repair some of the part or not. All of this is indigenously built, and it's all field upgradable, which allows you to take all the control in your hand, and you're not relying on a company which is going to look forward to getting all the support elsewhere. So from that, we have embarked on this mission. A small introduction to our company. We are winners of the Make in India for Defense Challenge called IDEX, Disc 1. And as part of that, we are supported by the Indian Air Force, who have gladly shared a problem statement with us, with which we are currently making some progress in the direction of making surveillance systems or electro-optic systems for them. We are also finalists of the CRPF competition for surveillance. We are also the recommended for field trial by the Bureau of Police R&D. And we obviously have the defense manufacturing license for imaging systems for surveillance. As a company, the most honorable feather in our cap is that the Ministry of Defense had recognized us amongst the most innovative startups of India. And as a small startup, we have our own ISO Class 7 clean room in Bangalore. And the entire leadership team here is coming from all the premier colleges of India. So what we believe in is the situational awareness is not limited just to the handheld sites. It obviously is the first enabler. The person on the ground needs to know what exactly is up ahead of him, and there is nothing better than that. But before even you have a person to be sent on the ground, for a regular business, you need to know over the last expanse of 22,000 kilometers of India's border, or 15,000 kilometers of the land border, or 7,500 kilometers of a sensitive area of the border, one needs to know what's going on, which is where our platforms come into picture. The platforms are communicating across different locations of these products, whether it be on the UAV, on an aircraft for reconnaissance, on a spacecraft, or on a satellite, or finally on land as a fixed form system. All of these use the same bolts, nuts and bolts. All of these are using the same Lego blocks, if you may say, and they are upgradable to whatever size you want to do. That is the beauty of the platform. We call it the intelligent network because wherever it's possible for you to connect it on a private cloud, we would be enhancing the richness coming in from the otherwise enabled edge intelligence. The edge intelligence lets you know what's going on right now and can see how many people there are. It can count how many vehicles there are, etc. But the moment you connect it to the cloud, well, even if a private cloud, it gives you even further rich features, such as over a period of time, how exactly the product or the situation has changed. For border surveillance, we have a suite of our Vision series of portfolio. This series is starting from 400 nanometers all the way up to 14 microns. And we have different focal length for different segment of the electromagnetic spectrum. And we also have a common optics across a very wide range of the electromagnetic spectrum, which allows you to do fusion at all times. And this enables you to do not only just the thermal imaging, it allows you to do a lot more activities in the night when it comes to positive identification of people, when it comes to positive identification of things which would otherwise have a similar thermal footprint. That is when you would want to know how exactly whether this particular is a target, a subject is really a friend or a foe, and that's where our products will be coming into picture. When it comes to the optics, we have our own optics for long range, and these are up to 1600 millimeters, and they can also be expanded for other numbers as you may need. This is one of our products which is quite useful to the border surveillance part, which is where you can go for detection up to 18 kilometers, recognition at 12 kilometers, and identification at half a kilometer. When we say identification, we are not necessarily using the standard framework which is used, but we are looking at a person whose picture can be matched with a database so that you can be 100% sure, or at least 96.5% plus sure that this is that person. That is the level of identification we are talking about. All the products have been tested and trialed at different locations across the border of India, and all of these are embedded with Edge Analytics, so you can rely on them for any of your requirements. The Noctvision is a night vision enabled product for the border surveillance. These are highly intelligent. They carry all the classifications on board. The classifications would include but are not limited to counting the number of people, counting the number of vehicles, reading the vehicle's license plates, checking the person's picture with the negative database that you may have in order for you to know whether this is the militant that you're looking for or not. Checking for aircrafts, checking for vehicles which are of different nature, also recognizing different types of animals. And we also have embedded inside it the alarming conditions where within a particular zone, the product can let you know whether there's an alarm at a particular bearing or not. So that a person, again, one of the persons is not occupied in just looking at all the images, and it is not based on the person's skills alone that one would be able to detect or recognize or identify a subject coming into the picture. These are some of the solutions which are for different purposes. As I said, we are into platforms. We are agnostic to the products. So the platforms can be converted into land-based vision products. They are being converted into air surveillance, and they are already being tested on a pilot basis for one of the missions of ISRO. So they can be converted into anything possible. And that's where the beauty of the platforms lie. We have demonstrated these platforms to the Indian Army. We have demonstrated to CRPF and CISF, and we will also be very happy to have these conversations going further. As I said, we are a startup. We have converted the technology into platforms. We have done all the tests required from local laboratories, and we are very happy to be privileged to be actually getting opportunities from Indian Army and Indian Railways and some of the organizations from the government of India to have allowed us to do pilot projects with them, which is what we have currently done, and some of our products are already installed at these locations. To give you an idea of how our onboard imaging comes, first of all, it is not necessary for anybody to really take the images. It is not required mandatorily that you have to have an image in order to do the analytics. The image is already there. So the analysis comes out and it tells you whether there is an action required or not. So the image is fairly redundant. Having said that, if you do look at the image, then what we can do is all of our products are built with image fusion, which means that if you have to read of a particular car license plate, or if you're looking for the name on the T-shirt of some subject who is trespassing in your opinion, or if you're looking for a hot weapon somewhere, or if you're looking for a fog penetration, so as to look at the person correctly. All of these can be done, and you can see a single image which will be having both the capability of the OCR as well as a hot weapon inside. And you can also see the same image in a different format, which is purely visible format, along with only information which will be covered in thermal. This is not limited only to night vision. It is a combination of various electromagnetic spectrum segments, including the thermal IR along with visible, or the shortwave with the visible, or various other such combinations, all for long range, ultra long range. These are the two segments that we are operating in as of now. Before I conclude, this is the team that we are, and all of us come from background on electronics, optics, or imaging systems. The co-founders are all from IIT Delhi, IIS Bangalore, ISI Kolkata. I'm personally from IIM Calcutta. And we have 100 plus man years of experience in a similar field with organizations of repute from within India. And we have been working in India all the time. And now we also have advisors who have been helping us from the perspective of ruggedization for military use. So this is in a nutshell about us. We have 32 patents with the founding team and 4 patents with the company. We're fairly into technology development, and we are looking at opportunities to work with the with all the border serving forces, all the Indian armed forces, in order for us to take this vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat ahead, and we'll be very happy to work on that. So I would like to conclude with a thank you to all of you to allow me to be participating in this meeting, and also to give us an opportunity to test us for your future needs. Give it a shot to work with Indian companies such as us and the startups such as us, so that we can also be challenged for your unresolved problems, and we can also be tested for your existing needs. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you indeed. Hello, can you
Yes,
hear
sir.
me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Yeah. Thank you. It was great that Sandeep Shah gave us a very educative overview of what his optimized electronic products can do for the armed forces. I was particularly impressed by the fact that his products are agnostic. They can be put on all types of platforms, starting from UAVs to aircraft to spacecraft and satellites, etc. And there is changeability of the components, which is, I thought, a very useful capability to have, because then it helps us to in a way ruggedize the product. It helps in the maintenance. It helps in the spare parts inventory. He talked of a private cloud. I think that's also a very good concept, a private cloud for the storage of our data. And I was most happy to note his 3 categories of identification, recognition, and detection, recognition, and identification. I thought that sums it up very neatly. You have, his ranges of detection go up to 18 kilometers for that border surveillance tool that he has talked of. Recognition is at 12 kilometers, and identification, in terms of, as I have understood from what he has put across, identification, that means matching the facial recognition, matching the identity of the person with our photo records, so that we know exactly, we can identify exactly who is coming at 0.5 kilometers and 0.3 kilometers, as he said. I think that's a very impressive kind of a capability to have. He's also talked of fog penetration. And in the Q&A, I'd like this aspect to be addressed more, because a number of our image intensification and other products, are degraded by fog and smoke and dust. You see, which is a big handicap, because in war, you will encounter smoke, you will encounter dust because of the enemy shelling, enemy mortaring, firing his mortars, artillery shells, etc. It is not a dust-proof clinical environment. So ruggedization involves being able to see through that haze of dust and smoke and all the fires, secondary fires that start because of artillery. So we have to, ruggedization would involve the capability to penetrate fog and dust, etc. So I think that is a very useful capability to have. I was impressed to note that the team has 32 patents individually and about 4 patents as a company. I would request that they focus more on ruggedization, and I'm sure in the Q&A session you will be asked much more on this aspect. Thank you, Sandeep Shah, for an excellent and a very useful presentation, and we hope in the future that the armed forces and the Central Police Organization will take more of your products, and we'll encourage Atmanirbhar. We will encourage Indian players. I'm very keen to see that happen. May I
Thank you,
now
sir.
request IG BSF, Mr. K.S. Banyal, to give us the BSF perspective on sub-conventional operations and the use of night vision devices to optimize these. Over to Mr. K.S. Banyal.
Bakshi sir, Mr. Banyal will be next because he's sorting out some technical problem. We can move on, sir, to the next speaker.
All right then, may I then request Major General Mandeep Singh, ADG Rashtriya Rifles, which is very close to my heart. I've had 2 tenures, Mandeep, in the Rashtriya Rifles, in the 9th Sector RR at Kishtwar, and then in as Romeo Force, GOC Romeo Force. So over to you, Mandeep, for your presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir, and co-panelists. I am General Mandeep Singh, as General Bakshi mentioned. I am also the Additional Director General of Rashtriya Rifles. And the good thing about seeing General Bakshi as the chair kind of sorts out all my problems, because he is more than eligible to speak on this subject. I would only fill in the blanks, really, and I'll look back at him for all clarifications and queries. In fact, the general was commanding Romeo Force, I was commanding a regiment 25 in the same area. Sir, I will focus on the CI environment very quickly, and then come on to the limitations of night fighting, and in the existing CI grid, and then come up with some kind of a wish list of what is required to improve our night fighting capability in the RR. I will use a slide presentation, so I'm going to put this up now, and please let me know if it's visible.
That's fine.
Right. Very quickly, sir, the situation in the valley after the Article 370 and the Article 35A, there's a fragile normalcy which exists south of the Panjal ranges, but continues to remain volatile in the valley. And despite the COVID lockdown, it's to the credit of everybody there that successful DDC elections have been held. A lot of kinetic operations are still continuing. Foreign terrorists are much lesser in numbers, and therefore there is a focus on local recruitment. In addition, social media continues to remain a big challenge for all the RR forces operating in the CI grid. Infiltration has considerably reduced, particularly now in the winters. And so the border fence continues to remain a deterrent. But the issue today is that the existing CI/CT operations are based on very old technology and principles, where we continue to follow this concept of cordon by night and search by day. And this is because the night fighting capability is still not to its optimum and needs considerable enhancement. So therefore, is there a need to change our tactics of night fighting? That is the question which I'll try and now address. What are the limitations that we find in conduct of night operations? Firstly, of course, is that it requires a lot of coordination between a myriad of agencies that operate on the CI grid. Second problem is identification of red and foe, the issue of fratricide, risk of blue on blue shooting on your own. And then in the areas that operations are carried out, particularly in built-up areas, hot pursuit is very difficult at night. There are lanes and by lanes and houses. It's very difficult should terrorists run out from one house to another. A lot of emphasis on technical intelligence is there. It is available, but it's not always so precise. You get a general area, you know that the guy is there. You need, therefore, to draw fire and draw reaction, because you are not. You need to be pinpointed 100% sure. And then there is this issue of social media. You will all agree today that the situational awareness because of active social media is very high. And so what you know, even the terrorist inside, he is also as informed of what's happening outside. So really, surprise is not really achieved. And then as you go through the night and you deliver operations at night, pressure builds up from the media, then pressure builds up from the locals, and it becomes difficult. By morning, you find a lot of other people involved all around the area of operations. A word about the way we conduct operations today. This is essentially for those of you who are not from the uniform. I'll just go over this very simply to clarify, so those of you who can understand that how a CI operation or a typical cotton and search operation is carried out. So we have these bases in the hinterland where we continuously gather intelligence, ensure population control measures, and then once you get specific intelligence, either with the assistance of the police or your own military intelligence or human intelligence or whatever form of intelligence, you launch an operation. You try and maintain as much surprise as possible. And once you get into the target area, you set up an outer cordon. And then slowly you tighten that cordon to make it smaller. You can focus on the area which is the target area. You place your stops. So as I was saying, sir, the present state of the equipment is generally second generation equipment with very few weapons which are equipped with night vision devices. And the present technology has this limitations of range and therefore lesser accuracy. And I've spoken at length to a number of company commanders and battalion commanders. One of the biggest problems they have been facing is a very poor battery backup for their night vision devices, especially in operations which last over a day, 2 days, 3 days. And since additional chargers are not available, there is always a problem of how to recharge the NVD batteries. Very few of them actually work on DC, especially DC. And therefore, most cordons, the support system comprises of portable generators. Those also make a lot of noise, so you need silent portable generators which can help in charging the night vision devices. The IFF is difficult. Spot illumination of the target house or the target area is another challenge. We need to keep the target area under surveillance throughout the night. We generally believe that the TI sites are definitely much more effective, but then surprisingly, none of our weapon mounting sites are TI based. And so that is something that my friends in the industry must look at, of providing us thermal imaging based weapon night sites. They are costlier. That is why a lot of it is dependent on foreign technology. If I were to say what is the night vision capability that we desire for our force protection, the first point, and I just mentioned it, is that we need a TI-based weapon-mounted sights for all our personal weapons. You can just imagine a guy who's looking in the dark through a II sight, and that's got just a range of 300 to 400 meters with just a 20 minutes, so maybe half an hour or an hour battery backup. It's quite a challenge to be in a cordon all through the night. TI-based weapon-mounted sights will actually solve this problem to a large extent. The second thing that is desirable is a very high quality of sniper rifles. Actually, sniper rifles, in our view, is going to be a game changer. If you're able to eliminate your target house or your target area, and you have a good sniper with a very nice, with a long and durable night vision capability, you should be able to actually take out the terrorists. Some are already coming in, but numbers are few. We hope that very soon the the numbers will be in greater, and then it would ease our conduct of operations at night. I have alluded to the need for extended battery life for night sites, and I would urge the industry, please look at this requirement in earnest. It's actually a big, big requirement. We must get smaller, portable, and long life batteries for all our equipment to conduct operations. Ropes and sorry, what happened with this? We need ropes, not the normal plastic and these nylon ropes that we have, but we need specialized ropes and telescopic ladders so that house searches, especially from top to down, can be easily carried out by specialized troops. And another interesting thing is silent radio sets. The squelch capability. Ideally, a Motorola with a headset is the best. And if we can get silent communication radios, it'll help in a lot of ways in maintaining surprise. Hello,
Go on.
can you hear me, sir?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. As far as the bases are concerned, especially the COBs, the operating bases, what we need is smart fences. This is I'm sure most of you here would know what are smart fences. But what the challenge we face is that in case your COB, that is your company operating bases, shift frequently, then these smart fences cannot be permanently located. I mean, they cannot be fixed to the ground. So there has to be some kind of a roll-up capability should you be constantly relocating your company operating bases. There are a number of people whom I have interacted with and find that smart fences that we have today, they are fixed with concrete to the ground. And in a fast-changing, fast-paced environment like the CI that we face, you cannot have this kind of permanent smart fences. The general mentioned about drones. I fully subscribe and agree to what he's saying. Increasingly, drones are going to become a big challenge for us. We are already seeing the IG from the BSF mentioning about drones dropping weapons across. Very soon, they could be used for dropping internally within also armaments or weapons. And they could pose a serious threat to our COBs and to our bases. And so, therefore, we need counter drone radars, small, rugged radars which can identify at about 4 to 5 kilometers, at least up to the horizon, and with a vertical capability of about 45 to 50 degrees. It gives cushion time. One can pick up the drones, you can track it, and you can then drop it. And so one is to pick it up and detect it, and then the second requirement is of drone guns. Drone guns are very essential to drop them. These are easily now, one sees them in the market. They are man portable. They can be held by a single individual, even on in a section, a soldier carrying a drone gun. It would be very effective in conduct of our CI operations. We need lightweight bulletproof jackets. Some are there, they're coming in, but more and increasingly more so that the soldier is able to move easily and not weighed down by the weight of his bulletproof jacket. Integrated surveillance centers. As we graduate more and more towards technology, we need integrated surveillance centers in all our RR battalions, wherein the commanders can watch, keep a watch, look at and integrate drones, They can integrate their cameras, they can integrate their radars, etc., in a centralized, integrated surveillance center. This could be at a battalion level, and then gradually go up to sector level and to the force headquarter level. Spot illumination, these are, one is given to understand that high potency LED searchlights are now easily available. We are looking at these powerful lights which can be placed around in a cordon to illuminate the target area, the target house, and keep the place under surveillance throughout the night. Of course, for that you need portable generators with much more power, which are silent and which can with better efficiency. And lastly, robust communication system is essential. One possibility, it's an expensive option. It is satellite communications. It is desirable. In case we too can use the same, it would not only provide us security and secure communication, also assist us in keeping a track of what the terrorists are using increasingly satellite communication. So with this being the wish list, sir, I'll stop here. I have tried to give you an overview of how we conduct quantum search, what are our limitations, what is our status of night vision capability today, and what we desire to have in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mandeep. Can we now request IG BSF Mr. K.S. Banyal to kindly start his presentation, and we will revert to Mandeep after that. Over to you, KS. Over to you.
A very good afternoon, General Srivastava, General Bakshi, General Arora, General Mandeep, and Mr. Shah. Sir, can you see the slides?
Yes, first class, and we can hear you.
Oh, thank you, sir. So I'll start with the challenges in border management at night. So border management, we got challenges during day also, but challenges are a little more during night time. And as you know, we are we are guarding a borderline of around 6,700 kilometers with Pakistan and with Bangladesh. And that includes around 140 kilometers of health sea, which BSF is manning independently, and about 200 kilometers of line of control, which we are manning with the Indian Army. And vast areas of Sundarban Delta, riverine borders formed due to river Ganges, Brahmaputra, Teesta, Mahananda, and other smaller rivers, hill tracts bordering Tripura and Mizoram, thickly populated areas on both sides of the IB in the state of West Bengal especially, and in some other states also, including Tripura. The ethnic similarity on both the sides of the IB, habitation between IB and the border fence. That is, we have fenced the border, it has solved the problem, major problem, especially it was in particular in Punjab, it was a great asset in containing the militancy over there and eventually wiping it out. But once you got the population living on the other side of the border, they are little fenced out during night because not many operations are carried out on the other side of the fence. Now I'll take you through. We have got the floodlights in most of the areas, but these are not everywhere. So just some photographs, we could have many, which show the peculiarities of the areas. Just for patrolling, nakas, and mobile patrolling and guarding the fence borders. Then mobile patrolling in Punjab, night boat nakas in the river areas and other border bodies. Then we got riverine borders which are infested with a lot of sarkanda, elephant grass, and it is there both on western borders and eastern borders. In Jammu, it's a big challenge, and so is true for Punjab. And Rann, as you know, it's again a difficult area, especially Rann, desert, and the jungles. You tend to lose your sense of direction at night. But with the coming of the floodlights, you can make out about the direction, but it is not everywhere, and especially when other side is also well lit. Then creek areas, we patrol with the watercrafts. We got the mangrove forest of Sundarban areas, and border fence is there. So on the both sides, you see the thick vegetation which is there, and it's the northeast. This is a photograph from Tripura, where mosquito menace is there. PF and CF malaria, these are very prevalent over there, and other vector-borne diseases also at many of the places in northeast. And another big issue, which is a challenge during day also, and especially during the night, we got population on both sides of the borders. I've taken some photographs over here where you can see the boundary pillars. These are just going through the village. One side is Bangladesh, other side is India. This is a peculiarity on the India border, India-Bangladesh border. And I've seen a place, I was accompanying border in the North Bengal area, Siliguri sector. There is a village called Narayan Jodh. During that time, it was in late 80s. When I was accompanying border, there was a house. When the boundary pillar was inside the house, their kitchen was towards Bangladesh and living area was towards India. And at that time, father was serving in Bangladesh, doing some job over there, and son was doing some job on the Indian side. So these are the challenges. And then the prevalent trans-border crimes which are there on the western side, Indo-Pakistan border is mainly armed infiltration. They always try to push in the arms. Infiltrators with arms and narcotics, and cross-border firing is very common, especially in Jammu area. And LC, as the generals from the army, they know it better than me. Day in and day out, there is firing, and so is the cross-border firing in Jammu area. About Bangladesh border, we have got illegal migration. Then we have got smuggling of drugs, fake currency, cattle, a lot of cattle, they go from this side. The thing start from maybe Rajasthan, Haryana, and all the way it goes up to Bengal. And now they have started shifting to the other side also, that is Assam and Meghalaya. Bengal has been controlled a little. There is a little bit of containment. Then there is human trafficking on Indo-Bangladesh border. And another challenge which has come, we see it especially on Jammu border and in the areas around Gurdaspur and Amritsar. This is during the last 5 months, we have detected 3 tunnels in Jammu area, and it's again a challenge because the land borders with the floodlights and the other gadgets which are there for the surveillance, it has been guarded, it is being guarded and guarded well. So they are resorting to digging of the tunnels and pushing in the infiltrators, the weapons and narcotics through the tunnels, and also through the aerial route, through the drones. This is a photograph of a drone which was shot down in June last year, around 6 months back, and it had guns, weapons were there, ammunition was there, and there were grenades in this. So this challenge is there, and we don't have much of capability of detecting the tunnels, and also it was bare chance that we could shoot down this drone. I'll not go into much of the detail about this. So another menace, it is on the eastern borders. It is a large scale smuggling of cattle, which go, as I said, from Rajasthan and all, they cross whole of the country, and we need to guard that particular stretch. It's through border, they breach the fence, and then they use the water bodies also to push in the cattle to the other side. And in most of the cases on the eastern border, that is with Bangladesh, we got our people generally in Badipia, but they got an area which is given to them, at times extended to 500 meters or so. So maybe, or at times, one man he stays on this side of the border, other two they go to the other side of the border, and then the smugglers, they come in group of 50s, 60s, then they gherav our troops, and many of our troops, they have been injured, and while in hot pursuit, our people, they have died, including droning, when they try to retrieve some cattle from there. So another, now that I've listed the challenges, those which are there, those challenges are galore, but some challenges like on the Indo-Pakistan border, we have got most of the border which is fenced and floodlit, except areas of some border area in Gujarat which is being fenced, and of course that creek area is there which cannot be fenced. It is unfeasible. They also eliminate the area, that particular strip of the land, but whole of the area cannot be lit. Nowadays, as we see, there is dense fog all over, and even our, as General Bakshi said, and it was brought out by General Mandeep also, General Bakshi said about daylighting the night. It's not feasible during fog. It's very difficult, and we face this challenge day in and day out. Then other extreme weather conditions are there, those hazards are there. The night vision devices, they have also limited capabilities, and they limited domination ahead of the border fencing, as I have already earlier brought out. On the Indo-Bangladesh border, about 1/4 of the border is without fencing and floodlights. The deployment is thinner compared to the western borders. Then the trans-border crimes only are committed during the hours of darkness, and there is a lot of population, those who live beyond the fence also, and villages are close by, and they keep on exchanging the things during night, articles or other contraband items. Riverine gaps, as you have seen in the pictures, are difficult to guard against, especially during the nights. And these are obstacles also for uniformed personnel. Everybody is not a very good swimmer, and with the weapon and all that with them, once they are totally equipped, the limitation of night vision devices, it has already been brought out. Then we got high crops which are sown in Bengal and other places. There's a lot of foliage, jungles are there. Then fence breaches are very, very common, especially in Bengal, northern Bengal area. These are maximum. Then there are some countermeasures which we take into account. Fencing, we are trying to complete it. Fencing and floodlighting on all the feasible gaps. Then periodical vulnerability mapping of the area, that is being done. Repair and replacement of improvised obstacle system in the vulnerable patches, it is being done. Special operations are carried out beyond the fence during night. Once we have got information, then wild growth is there is an effort, endeavor to clear it as far as possible. Functionality of the floodlights and the gadgets is being checked from time to time, and we are trying to get some better gadgets as force multiplier. And there is an endeavor to upgrade the fencing system also, because earlier fencing which was there or which is there, it is a little fragile, and we are trying to upgrade it, going for a better solution. Then adopting dynamic tactics, leaving a routine, putting in lab duck knuckles and MCPs, regular sensitization of the troops regarding changing dynamics and the tactics adopted by the smugglers and the trans-border criminals. We also try to update the record about the criminals, overground workers, and sympathizers of ANEs. We have started a system of simultaneous coordinated border patrolling with Bangladesh, border guards Bangladesh on the borders during night. Then carry out joint operations with sister agencies in the depth area. Upgradation of the fencing, have brought it out, and we are trying to upgrade the arrangements in or augment the illumination arrangements also, like the one, these are lights which are being done by locally by the units concerned. And that's all from my side, because time was short. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, K.S. Banial. That was a very, very informative and educative presentation. And you have given us a very clear idea of the difficulties of border management in the context of the BSF, how you are looking after 6,700 kilometers of border with Pakistan and Bangladesh. You have highlighted the diverse terrain, the peculiarities of the 140 kilometers of the LC, which you are doing independently, and 250 with the conjointly with the Indian Army. You talked of how fencing was a very big help in Punjab, and I totally endorse that observation. You have floodlighted that whole area. In most areas, we now have floodlighting, as you are saying, and the fact is that our satellite pictures show the India-Pakistan border as a wall of light, because the floodlighting is picked up by the satellites. You have told us the difficulties of elephant grass, how that restricts observation. Even if you have night vision devices, you have told us about the fog, which I said is a very major problem, and I would again throw it back to Mr. Shah, Sandeep Shah. What can you do about the fog? Because that is, all forces are encountering, that is common to all of us. He's also spoken of the how we have the on the Bangladesh side. There are villages on the border, and the border pillars are almost in the houses. They are almost in on the middle of houses. He's talked of the problem of tunnel. That is something that is extremely worrisome, because you create a border fence, you create an obstacle system, and the enemy tries to find out ways to degrade that, to beat that. And then one of the main things that they are trying now is tunnels beneath the border fencing. And I don't know what kind of countermeasures. We were at one time talking of passing tractors and heavy, bulldozers to go over the border areas to perhaps in the question and answer session, perhaps you'd like to take on how we are going to beat the tunnels, how we are going to beat the drones. The drones are a big problem, big worry, because we've just seen in the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict how Azerbaijan won the war because of drones. And in our country, unfortunately, we so far have had a thing that drones are only required for surveillance, nothing else. I don't know why we were so insistent on not touching the armed drone. There are that very romantic notions that aerial combat requires, manned fighters, and we can't let drones come in there. That's a very quaint notion, and the earlier we get rid of it, the better, because drones are the future. They are here to stay, and they are affecting wars in a very big way. An entire armored corps to Armenia. Azerbaijan used the Turkish armed drones for a change, and we are going on for them in a much more bigger way. 89% of the Indo-Pak border you mentioned is fenced and floodlit. You have to take care of the depth areas. You are doing vulnerable mapping, and you have also spoken of riverine gaps, etc., which are there, which pose a problem. It was a very educative presentation, and it has enlightened all of us and made us aware problems of border management that we are facing. The BSF in particular is facing, and doing a very good job. My kudos to you. That was an excellent presentation, very educative, and I'm glad you brought us up to speed with the which is where the cutting edge now is. You talked of situational awareness being very high due to the social media, and surprise is rare. And we may mount the cordon and search operation at night, but because of risk of collateral damage, we have to perforce go in by day. move to the target area by night, but commence operations only by day to prevent collateral damage. And as you very rightly pointed out, especially in the valley, this was never happening in my time. When an operation started, the civilians kept well out, because they knew that it was legitimate operation. So I think what we do, I would advise that we have to take deterrent action against people who now try and interfere with legitimate counter-terrorist operations. It's not all. So that this wave of civilians interfering in city ops is checked. Because otherwise we are going to have, I can imagine how we can have, it can get very problematic. You've addressed that, hit the nail on the head when you have talked of the limited battery lives. We have to see that the batteries become smaller, more powerful, and that they last longer. And because carrying generators around is not a very neat situation in operation. And even if we have silent generators, they have their drawbacks. TI sites are more effective. I totally agree with you with that one. And very specifically, we had seen it ahead of the line of, ahead of the fence on the line of control, where most of our ambushes were using HSTI, the Israeli ones, and they were bloody effective. And I think they were one of the reasons that brought casualties down. We brought infiltration down by about 80%. I'm not very sure how much have we been able to introduce sites in hinterland operation. We'll have to increase that, because that will give us the revolution in military affairs. That will enable us to fight by night. And you are dead on. We need sights on our firing weapons, because only then can we be effective at night combat. Once we are able to enhance the level of TI sights to fight by night to 24 operations, then we could think of conducting operations at night. The only problem with floodlighting the combat area is that the terrorist will always have a shot at your floodlight. It's such a prominent target that it could be blasted out and you lose a fair bit of money in that. So we'll have to have rugged floodlights which cannot be sort of put out by a single bullet, etc. That kind of a thing we'll have to see. Company operating basis, we will have to think of systems which are portable. Because COBs, as I remember from my time in CICT operations, though it was good to have a grid, the company operating base was more of an atom base, but very often they had to move out a lot. And now we are shifting grids far too much. I don't know how much level of shifting now. Have to be those which are mobile. Drones and snipers. Even in my time, we had tried to use sniper rifles. But the problem was collateral damage. Even by day, we were scared of using sniper rifles till fire had been drawn. But then the rules of drastically. Otherwise, if you are able to pick up the target at a distance, but he hasn't opened fire, somehow that legitimacy is now lacking. That legitimacy that we pick up a guy, drop him dead, quietly. Sniper is an ideal situation, but somehow we were not able to use it in my time, and I'm not very sure if we will be able to overcome that. Lightweight BP jackets are a thing that we had worked a lot on. Please encourage, I had started this in 9 Sector RR and Romeo Force, ORSA bases, building ORSA databases on our weapons and equipment. And we found that in our BP jackets, about 35% of the area above the chest, from the upper rim of the BP jacket to the, where the BP patka ends, we found almost 35 to 37% lethal hits there. Because when you are operating in a frontal profile, it comes. So we have to increase the size of the breastplate and either do away with the backplate or reduce it. And especially in the kind of operations outdoor, you don't need the backplate. Please stop. It was for waterproofing, but it sweat like hell. And the boys prefer to go without the BP jacket. You imagine if you sweat in the cold of Kashmir, in the snow, and then you have to lie the whole night with a clinging wet vest. So we found that it is much better to use gabardine covering. Gabardine covering, in fact, we had made gabardine cloth bags in which we used to put that bulletproof plate and just hang it round our neck. Just hang it round our necks. So that is one of the things we have talked of. Integrated surveillance centers in all RR battalions. We have these integrated surveillance centers line of control because the defenses are permanent. We'll have to look into this facet of how much we can use them in the RR because of the constantly shifting basis. So whatever you have to have in terms of a surveillance center at the battalion level has to be a roll-on grid. Has to be just upstick and move to the next location. Otherwise, it's not really. There is a problem. Thank you once again, all the speakers, all the panelists for excellent presentation. And since the industry people are here, we have let you listen to these very, very tactical detail so that you can come up with solutions. The best that you could give us is small-sized batteries, pencil cells, long life. Don't need charging. If they can be DC, nothing like it. Because the biggest problem we encounter, and I see from what Mandeep is saying, the same problem continues from my time. Everybody used to complain about the battery life of the HHTI, and we had to keep sending them. We had to buy batteries, try and improvise solutions from the market. But commercial off-the-shelf technology, we'll have to take a look at that, how COTS can dovetail with this. Thank you very much for excellent presentations, all my panelists, especially from the RR, from the BSF, and our civilian private industry representative. Most educative presentation, very practical, and I'm sure something good will come out of these kind of discussions. We should have more of these. A Q&A session, and if there is a Q&A session, I'd request the people. Ravi, are we going in for a Q&A session?
Sir, there are no questions or there are only comments. I leave it to General Srivastava if there is time.
Yeah, because I have to go for the next seminar now. Over to you, General Srivastava. Thank you so much for having me over. Most educative, most useful. God bless the RR, God bless the BSF and all our boys out there. Our best wishes to you. Happy New Year, Happy Lohri, and all the best. Happy hunting, and go on. Knock these bloody SOBs out. Thank you. Jai Hind.
It remains for me, sir, to thank you, the chair, and all the eminent and esteemed panelists for having given a very valuable insight and a host of suggestions flagging their problem areas. I would just like to offer by way of suggestion two very small ones. One is that particularly in these situations, robotic sensors, which we are having in very small numbers, that could also be worked upon to give you that ability to fight better at night. And secondly, a helmet mounted sight or a night sight communicating with the weapon sight so that the user can fire from around the corner, above the wall. He can fire without taking the weapon to his eyes, and these things are being done. So that integration in particularly critical encounters will come in very handy and will save casualties. So thank you so much, all of you. And we close the session now.